The Institute of World Affairs at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee presents International Focus, a weekly discussion of the people and events behind today's global headlines. Support provided by Milwaukee Public Television and the UWM Center for International Education. Now here's your host, Doug Savage.
Welcome to International Focus. The recent agreement in Geneva between the government of Iran and members of the so-called P5+1, permanent members of the UN Security Council in Germany, called for the easing of international sanctions that have crippled the Iranian economy. Those sanctions have been at the heart of negotiations over Iran's nuclear program, and today we'll look at their history and the impact they've had on the lives of citizens in that country. Our guest today brings a unique set of qualifications to our discussion. Moshen Bahmani chairs the Department of Economics at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where he holds the rank of Distinguished Professor. In addition to his faculty responsibilities, he also serves as Director of the Center for Research on International Economics and editor of the Journal of Economic Studies. A prolific author, his scholarly research includes numerous articles dealing with the economy of his native Iran. Moshen, welcome back to International Focus.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm wondering if you can put on your professorial hat and give us a Sanctions 101, just sort of where they started and how they've evolved over the years.
All right. There are usually two types of sanctions that we can talk about. One is what average person will think. There are, sanctions on commodities or goods that cannot be exported into Iran. And then there are sanctions that countries cannot buy from Iran. For example, sanctions that on goods that we cannot export to Iran will be like mostly goods from the US, airplanes, cars. So when you travel to Iran, you will see that the airplanes in Iran, whether private airlines or public airlines, they are all very old and they belong to pre-revolutionary period because since the hostages, there are sanctions that Iran cannot purchase these.
Well, and in that pre-revolutionary period, the U.S. was a major trading partner, right?
Oh, of course.
So the air fleet probably was largely U.S. built.
Boeing, yes, exactly, with some European Airbus and this and that. Or you travel to Iran, you won't see any American cars, whereas in the old days, Chevrolet used to have an assembly plant in Iran. Oldsmobile, which no longer exists here in the U.S., it also had an assembly plant in Iran. So there are goods that these are tangible commodities. You travel there, you don't see. Of course, smaller commodities, people get around. For example, Apple is an American company, cannot export iPod to Iran, but you see a lot of iPods in Iran because these are small goods and they could be brought to Iran through underground economy or by buying in Turkey or Dubai or in any other neighboring countries and smuggling into Iran. So these are what I call things that you will observe directly. There are also sanctions on some of these commodities that are used by Iranian manufacturers, namely the firms that produce goods. So these are mostly raw materials and things that go into production process. Therefore, if they cannot buy these from overseas or from the West, those firms over time, will be idled, which is what's happening now. And because of these, you see many firms are either going out of business or they are closing down and laying off the workers. So unemployment rate is high. Okay. Now the other sort of sanctions, which I like to talk about, is what I call indirect effects of these sanctions. You don't see, these are not in terms of commodities, but when US or UN or the West impose sanctions on Iranian oil exports. So when Iran was unable to export oil, that hurt their dollar revenue. Their quota under the OPEC used to be 3.6 million barrels a day, but after the sanctions, that has come down to 700,000. So they are only allowed to export 700,000 barrels a day. So imagine how much of foreign exchange Iran has lost. And this one went into effect almost a year and a half ago. And that's when you observe that because Iran didn't have enough revenue to support value of its currency, then the currency jumped up about 300%.
Huge inflation.
Now, of course, the outcome, will be, economically speaking, you may call huge inflation, but in 1996, I published a paper that this could bring stagflation. That is, inflation and recession in Iran, which is the case right now. Now, usually when there is inflation, we have to look and see whether this is because of demand pull. Is that because people are buying more goods and services that's bringing about inflation? If that is the case, then your economy should grow. Or is the inflation cost push? That is because of increased production costs. Then that hurts people's purchasing power. People cannot afford to buy. Then firms unable to sell are going to lay off the labor, then brings about the recession. This latter is the case in Iran now. That is, when your currency depreciates by 300%, imported goods are very expensive. That's like saying that dollar has appreciated. Indeed, dollar went up 3 times. I would say in 3 years ago, in August, or no, two years ago, in April 2011, the rate used to be about little over 11,000 rial per dollar. Then when the sanctions went through effect, little by little, this rate began coming up. In less than 6-7 months, it even reached 40,000. Now, clearly, some people will call hyperinflation. I don't think it's hyperinflation, but yes, proportionally, price of all goods, whether produced at home or imported, went up by the same ratio. So, for example, land, which is not tradable commodity, or housing prices, that's not tradable. It is there, but just because dollar is up, everything moves up proportionally. Now, the recent, agreement with the West has helped a lot. I was just talking to my family in Tabriz, which is the capital of East Azerbaijan, 2 days ago. They tell me that, oh yeah, the housing prices now has come down. Land prices have come down almost 25%. So by the same ratio, price of some commodities are coming down. So Iran has realized that, okay, they had no choice but to settle the nuclear issue, because otherwise things were getting really bad. If the issue was not settled, there was a second round of sanctions that the US Congress was supposed to vote, but now they have agreed, I think, under the new agreement, they have agreed to postpone these further sanctions. That's part of the deal. But imagine if Iran was imposed second round of sanction, that means no oil export. Yes, they want to export, but if the China, India, other countries that were allowed to buy, and they agree not to buy, then you have no export at all. Then situation would have gotten much, much worse in terms of inflation, recession, and I think they have realized that for political survival, we have to have a sound economy. And actually, it's the economic conditions that in every country, brings about political stability. For example, Soviet Union has realized after 70 years that it's not working. So they have to move toward, a free market system. China realized that it's not working. So they had to open up and move toward a free market. And I assume Iran has realized that, they cannot go on with the pre-agreement situation and, stick to their hard line and continue with moving the nuclear facilities, expanding or enriching uranium and so on and so forth. Situation would have gotten much, much worse. So hopefully, thankfully, there was a new election, a new president who was given a mandate by the supreme leader that, as I see, you have to settle the issue. So they have come forward with, with some suggestions, and apparently it has worked. And you've heard in the news that this secret negotiations took place 5 times over the last year. Even the first one was under the former president, Ahmadinejad. And the remaining 4 was under the new president. So they have been working on some agreements, but they had to publicize and bring it to table, bring the permanent, members of the United Nations and sign the agreement, which, as you have read and most everyone knows, they have agreed to at least freeze the nuclear facilities and enrichment and this and that for the 6 months. And in return, the UN, the US, and permanent members have agreed to ease some of the sanctions. And I even read that now there is a discussion of establishing direct flights between Iran and the US. So based on those 5 secret negotiations between only US and Iran, I believe that, the agreement, is going to stay. And I also believe that it's going to move above what the agreement itself is in terms of opening the door between the U.S. to more trade and more traveling, more even political relations, but little by little.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit about what that world might look like when Iran is reintegrated into the world system. But first, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
The Institute of World Affairs presents our community with a range of public programs relating to global issues, U.S. foreign policy, and the world economy. For more information about the Institute of World Affairs, call 414-229-3220 or visit our website at www.iwa.uwm.edu.
Welcome back to International Focus. We're discussing Iran's sanctions and the effect on the economy with Moshen Bahmani. Well, before the break, we were talking a little bit about sort of the easing and looking forward perhaps to a time when Iran is integrated back into the world system. Talk a little bit about it, sort of pre-sanction and even pre-revolutionary era Iran's place in the regional and global economy.
Well, before the revolution, sometimes some of us used to classify Iran as maybe another state of the U.S. Things were so similar in terms of the economy, in terms of the whatever you want to call it, dress code, in terms of westernization, in terms of the even culture was moving toward the West. So, for example, I went there to school for my undergraduate program, and the universities was no different than what I have here now, in terms of the students, professors, relations, so on and so forth. But post-revolution, things have changed under the Islamic rules. Yes, there is what is known as hijab. So there is a dress code. There is no alcohol, or at least in the public. Then you see the change. And since the revolution, I think another phenomena that we have observed was the black market for foreign exchange, which, as I mentioned, in the old days, when I came to the U.S., you could buy dollar for 70 riyal per dollar, 70. That was the rate for so long, because Iran used to keep it fixed by providing dollar for anyone who wants to buy as much as they want. But since the revolution took place, then oil exports were down, so the central bank had no dollars. Therefore, they denied this convertibility. So what will people do if they want to leave the country or take their money out? Immediately, black market came to an existence. So the rate began in black market with 100 riyal per dollar. Then, as I mentioned, just almost a year ago, after the sanctions, it reached 40,000. So you can imagine what impact that will have. That restricted. I remember, before the revolution, I went to Michigan State University for my graduate work. Iranian students were the majority at Michigan State and in all campuses, because government used to provide the dollar at, you may call it subsidized rate, but that's what the rate was. And most everyone could come and study. But since then, we see drop in the Iranian student population among U.S. universities. With that rate, nobody can come. And most of the Iranian students that you see, they are in graduate programs. They are so good that U.S. universities try to attract them by offering TA-ship, RA, research assistant, or teaching assistant, and so on and so forth. Now, situation has changed. Of course, you also have to give credit to the regime that they have done some work, given the restricted amount of dollars, given they engage in 10-year war with Iraq. So you go to Tehran, now the capital is a huge city. There is a metro. There is, I believe Chinese have made the metro system in Tehran. So you go to capital, it's a huge city, it is clean, it looks nice, everyone goes there. I mean, they are impressed. Now, what this, agreement is going to do to Iran, and what the relief in the sanctions is going to do to Iran, the young generation, especially post-revolutionary population, they really admire the West. If you talk to them, you open the door, they all want to come to the U.S. or Europe, either for studying or traveling. And they are excited about the fact that things are going to work, and there will be a relation, there will be traveling. they will have a chance to buy American goods. I mean, imagine if everything works out with the U.S. and U.S. begins exporting cars to Iran. American cars in Tehran used to be popular. They will still be popular. Now some of these have been replaced by the Japanese cars, Korean cars. Of course, European cars have always been famous and imported. But I think the agreement is going to help both countries, not just Iran, but the U.S.
Well, what about, if the sanctions were off and just given the natural assets the country has, what is the role of the Iranian economy regionally and beyond?
Regionally, I think Iran, among the Middle Eastern countries, has the largest economy. It not only has the natural resources to, oil. It is known as oil exporting countries, but it has a lot of other non-oil exportable commodities. The last data I had looked at and worked with revealed that share of non-oil exports is about 35% of total exports. In other words, it's not just Iranian oil that they rely upon. Of course, removing sanctions is going to help the non-oil export too, which is one of the emphasis we put on in economics, that over a longer period of time, if Iran has to survive and grow and become a solid economy, they have to deviate from dependence on oil and rely upon non-oil export.
Well, and if we look at one of the other large economies in the region, that of Saudi Arabia, that kind of diversification, while certainly a goal of the government, really hasn't taken place to any great extent, right?
And, yeah, you're right, but Saudi, it's, it is oil-wise or economy-wise, we may think they are exporting too much, they are exporting, a lot. Yes, they generate a lot of dollar revenue, but they neither have infrastructure nor the population to dominate.
So they are among the people who are less enthusiastic towards this warming of relations and the removing of sanctions.
Exactly. I assume Saudis are unhappy about settling the issues with Iran, even if there was no nuclear issue between the two countries, because they realize that Iran is going to grow, and as Iran grows, maybe their political dominance will grow in the region as well. So that is true.
So that brings up a point. How do you think sort of the typical Iranian views Iran's place in the world? I mean, obviously the Persian history goes back thousands of years. And what do people think Iran's place should be in the region?
Well, that's yeah. I mean, you have to look at the issue in more depth. I think there is some sort of economic will. Then there is political will. Now, politically, all right, as you know, Iranian government is an Islamic nation, and Iran, Iranians are mostly Shia sect, whereas most other nations are the Sunni. So this has been in the history, the friction among even though, they are all Muslims, but still there is friction between the Shias and the Sunnis.
Well, I'm thinking perhaps if you look at China, I mean, China not being a dominant power is viewed, I think, by many Chinese as sort of the aberration. There was a period when artificially China was not playing its rightful role. Do you think there's any of that in Iran? I mean, historically, Iran has had a very pivotal place in the region.
I think over time, down the road when the generations change and Iran realizes that being an economic power is probably better than being a political power in the region, or maybe economic power will bring the political power, but living in peace with with the neighbors, with with everybody, it will benefit them in the long run. If they come to that conclusion, then my personal view is that they'll be okay, and the region will be okay. Of course, we never know what the other nations will do down the road.
Well, so we'll put you down as guardedly optimistic at present.
Yes, please.
Very good. Well, Moshen Bahmani, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
To our viewers, we'll see you next time on International Focus.
For information about the Institute of World Affairs and its many programs, or to become a member of the Institute, call 414-229-3220 or visit us at our website,